The following podcast is brought to you by Iconic Nation Media. Welcome to Season 5 of Level Up Podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Levy. I'm here to guide you on a journey of personal growth and fulfillment. Join me as we delve into the challenges of both business and personal life, aiming to discover our true selves and connect more deeply with the world around us. On this podcast, we'll explore the topics that inspire and empower us to become the best version of ourselves. From book reviews to interviews with iconic individuals, we'll have insightful conversations that resonate with your journey. And a big thank you to our sponsors, the Boys and Girls Club of America, Greater Conejo Valley, and Levy's Deli for supporting the show and helping us bring these valuable discussions to you. Please share, rate, and review the podcast. And thank you so much for listening. You can also leave your comments at Kimberly Levy on social media. Thank you for your feedback and thank you for listening. Okay, today I want to talk to you guys about the importance of telling your story. Now, this is something that can be applied to your business or as a parent to your children, in your personal life with your friends. And this occurred to me yesterday when I was playing golf with my instructor, and I love these sports analogies, especially sports that I'm not good at, because I think it gives me a new perspective and lens to share with you guys some of the experiences of what it's like to take on kind of these new activities and how I've been able to continue to level up my life. And so in playing golf yesterday, my instructor, she had told me, actually, she didn't tell me this yesterday, but I thought about this yesterday after my lesson. And she had told me a couple months back a story of somebody. And so basically the way it works with her is that you buy a pack of 4 classes. And so after the 4-pack was done, I didn't know what to do. I was like, am I supposed to go out on the range with somebody or the driving range by myself now? Or do I find someone to go on a course with? Like, I have no idea how to do that. So I was truly just kind of confused and not sure what I should be doing. And she had told me that, kind of as a side note, that, oh yeah, I had, this woman like yourself, and she wanted to get good at golf because she wanted to play with her husband. And she started from zero as an adult. And what she did was she came every single week for about 6 months. And she just continuously showed up to the lessons. And in that 6-month period, she completely transformed her golf game. And I'm thinking to myself, she's talking, I'm going, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this for 6 months. And it wasn't like some hard sell, like she was trying to sell me up or upsell me or whatever and get me to buy more packages. Like that wasn't really, she was just genuinely telling me the story of how she had helped this woman. And I reminded her of this woman, and the woman ended up being like a really good golfer. And anyway, it was a story of hope. But truly, it helped me because it carved a path for me, even though I have no idea who this woman is. I never met her. I'm sure she's lovely, by the way. And it just kind of gave me a blueprint to follow. Like, okay, this woman decided to commit to this for 6 months, and she was able to then go out with her husband and join a women's league, etc. And I thought, well, it's a good thing that I heard that story, because I really didn't have any frame of reference. Like, I don't know anybody else to ask about this necessarily. So I've now taken, I don't know, maybe I'm, let's say, 2.5 months into my golfing, and things are starting to come along, thankfully. And I still haven't gone out to the course, but I think we'll be doing that next week. I'm really just learning how to hit the ball properly, be patient with it. And finally, the last 2 sessions I've improved, and that momentum is important. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because it really did get me thinking about my passion and my purpose in being here with you guys, which is to help you level up your life. That's why you listen to my podcast, because I'm super passionate about leveling you up with me together in a way that's fun and fulfilling and meaningful. And you guys know that I've, I do this in many ways in my life. And I just thought, I need to tell my listeners and my friends that listen that their story matters, because oftentimes we don't feel like our stories matter, and you're not even sure why you would share your story sometimes with people. But I also think of it through the lens of being a mom, and how us sharing stories with our kids give them some framework, some blueprint, some point of reference, and it's anchoring, especially if it's something that can inspire the kids. And I just think that this art of storytelling is so powerful, because it really does give either yourself as a consumer kind of a frame of reference, or if you're a leader, or, like I said, in the context of your kids, sharing your stories helps them. It helps them anchor on, well, what's good, what's not so good, how should I behave? And I just think that this idea of sometimes we need to be the one telling the stories, and so many other times, especially in my life, I like to take the student role, and I like to observe other people, and I like to really hear from them on, what worked and what didn't work. And I'm always consuming these kinds of podcasts that really do help me. I mean, they help me both personally and professionally. And I just, wanted to kind of jump in and let you guys know that your story matters. And you might think your story doesn't really matter. And whatever it is, it could be a failure story, it could be a success story, it could be, a story of friendships, it could be, a health journey, it could be any kind of story. But I want to encourage you to open yourself up and realize that your story does matter. And obviously, I believe so much in storytelling that I'm making this my profession, because I love consuming other people's stories. And sometimes it's not even inspirational, just funny, or it's validating, right? And, especially if you're somebody out there that is kicking around this concept of starting your own podcast or YouTube channel, and you just don't know how, and you're not sure what you would say, I think you just stepping up to the mic and just telling your story, whatever's on your heart that day, it matters. It helps people. And you guys would be very surprised how many people, they'll pull me aside and say, hey, I listened to this episode of yours with, so-and-so that you interviewed, and it was incredible. Or it really, inspired me, or it made me think this way, or, and so what I'm telling you is your story matters so much. And I just want you to think of different ways that you can start weaving your story into your life, at a minimum with your kids and with your family. And, maybe on some other bigger level as well, like a podcast or your social media. And, I just think sometimes it's uncomfortable. Like for me, I believe it or not, I don't really love social media. I don't really love the camera. So many times, I'm like, oh, maybe I should post this. I'm like, nah, and I overthink it, and then I don't post something. But I realize that, many times when I go on my social media, or I go on my podcast, I get to really open up and share some story that resonates with, I know, at least, a couple people at a minimum. And, the power of the voice means something. It means something to be with somebody in their ear, if you're a podcaster, and share your experience. And I recently had somebody come up and approach me about developing a podcast, and they weren't sure if they should, and they've had this feeling of, well, everybody else is doing it. And it's like, yeah, but you're uniquely you, and the way you tell your story or explain your craft of what you do would really help certain people. And, have you ever noticed that sometimes you could listen to somebody telling kind of, maybe it's something motivational or something like a concept that you've heard before, but just the way their word choice or the inflection in their voice carries, there's something about it that just lands really well with you. Or, vice versa, you might turn on like a podcast and listen to someone be like, their voice is so annoying, or the way that they speak annoys me, and it's like a repellent. And so what I'm saying is, when you go to share your story, maybe it's through a blog, a book, a social media post, or you just talking to your family, the way you tell stories, or even to your friends of how something happened, like, you don't know who you're going to touch. And I just think that it's easy to feel like, well, my voice doesn't matter. There's so much content out there, and, people are consuming so much stuff nowadays. And, I would be a dime a dozen. I just want to let you know, if you're looking at this through like the business lens, your uniqueness is you. That's the whole thing. So the way you might position your particular business might be something that really resonates, like your teaching style or the way that you share, your examples of how you learned, or whatever it might be, can really help a lot of people. And especially if you're passionate about it and if you're authentic. Now, when I do some speaking engagements, one thing that I'll say that people come up to me, and I've gotten this over and over and over again. I get this in person, I get this through the podcast, but something I've heard over and over again is, gosh, you're so real, you're so authentic. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's how it is. Like, this is me being my most honest self. Like, I'm not trying to put on a performative, show. I'm trying to just be open and honest and real and talk to you as if you're my friend, my sister, and what I'm telling you is people pick up on that. So when you're able to tell a story in a way that is unfiltered and raw, and you can really just impart like wisdom or honesty or have some emotion behind what you're sharing, people pick up on it. Now, if you're in, say, like a corporate, let's pretend that you're in some corporate role or some other kind of, work kind of scenario, people know when you're authentic. So here's an example. Like, if you're giving a presentation and you're not sure, if you're just like, you're like not totally comfortable with it, with the material for whatever reason, like it's just not hitting. My recommendation for that is take a step back and be like, okay, what do I really want to convey to the listeners? Okay, who is my audience? Is it a senior executive crowd? Is it middle managers? Is it, interns? Who is the audience? And put your hat on as if you're them for a second and think, well, what would I hope to gain from this? And what would I like to learn? And how would I like someone to speak with me? So what I'm saying is, sometimes if you're not sure how to get comfortable with material that you're like presenting, right? Whether it's some kind of public speaking or, like I said, in a business context. I mean, look, you could even be a tennis coach. You could be anybody, right? In this sense, you could be a teacher. I would say go off script, and instead of being so robotical about how you present information, be more heartfelt about it. Be more real. Like, if there's a concept that used to be hard for you, but now you have a much better grasp on it, then explain it in a way that you are comfortable with. So instead of putting yourself in this position where you're going down this path that maybe you're not totally comfortable, maybe you're talking about it in a super technical way that you don't love, then like tweak the presentation, right? So what I'm saying is, when you speak to people in your storytelling, it is an art form. And I think the number one most important part of storytelling is that you are authentic, and that you're open, and that you're real, and you're really seeking connection with your listeners above and beyond anything. So rather than being so worried about how you look and, I don't know what people are thinking of you, like, put all that aside. Or like, did you hit all the points? Like, think of it less like that, and think of it more as like an energy exchange and like a knowledge exchange, and do it in a way that is just like you're comfortable. Like, put it in a scope and through a lens that you are super comfortable with the material. And sometimes you might need to rewrite it so that you just somehow position the discussion in a way that like lines you up. Now, here's another hot tip, since I'm talking about now presenting, storytelling through presentation. I know when I first started having to present, which was many, many, many years ago, my biggest fear was that somebody would ask me a question I didn't know the answer to. And I was petrified, because at that time I didn't have as much experience in my respective field. And so I would get super uncomfortable and worried that somebody would be asking me a question that I didn't have the answer to, and then I'd look stupid, and then I'd lose all credibility. So the way that I was trained to do this, and I've done this so many times, and this is also true if you're just in a regular meeting, right, with like a client. If somebody asks you a question and you're not sure the answer, you're allowed to say, you know what, that's a great question. I need to think about it. Or like, I need to research that, and I don't want to just give you some direct answer. I think I have an idea, but I want to give you the correct answer. So do you mind giving me a day to get back to you? And then make sure you go ahead and, turn it around and find out the answer and get back to them. But what you don't want to do is serve them up some BS, because why? People know when you serve up BS, and guess what? That's what gives them the ick. That's what makes them see you as someone that they cannot trust, because they know that you're just, something isn't sitting right, like they can sense it. People can sense BS. So what I'm saying is, don't BS your audience. If you're not sure about something, you just say, I'm not totally sure. Great question. I'll ask my team. Give me a day, or, hey, anybody else want to jump in the audience that wants to shed light on this? I haven't had experience with this exact question. And you know something? You might learn something too. I always, whenever I'm in a business meeting and I ask somebody a question, and they will either pause and think about it, or they will say to me, let me get back to you on that. I need to do some homework on that. I actually see it. I don't see them as being deficient in information. I see them as being somebody that is mature enough to know what they know, and they're confident in that, and know what they don't know, and they're comfortable with that too. So, this concept of storytelling is so important, and it's important in your personal life. Like I said, it's important in business. And, I would also encourage you, like, if you listen to a podcast, or there's a speaker at work, or even someone in a meeting, even in business school, I would do this. I remember there were certain people I always liked to listen to. And I'm like, why do I always like it when they're answering questions in school, right? And I remember my friend Rebecca, I always loved it when she would give an answer, because even if I had the same answer, it was just the way that she said it. And I would study the way she said it. I'm like, why is this so intriguing to me? Why is it so interesting when she talks? And you could sense like the whole room kind of would like nod, and like it when she spoke. And it dawned on me, it's because the way she would speak, she would change the tone of her voice. So she would have a very interesting cadence and pitch to her voice, where she would just almost like pose things as a question, and then, like high and low. And like, there was something about the rhythm of her speaking. And I actually started to kind of like adopt that. And funny enough, my son said something about that to me, like, I don't know, 6 months ago. And it really caught me off guard, because I don't even realize when I do it anymore, because I studied it. So, see, I think I might have even just done it. Like, I just had an inflection. But what I'm saying is, if you want to be a good speaker, listen to other good speakers and really get focused on, like, why do I like this person? Another one of my really good friends from business school, Hillary. So Hillary was on my podcast a while back now. She is another one that I love listening to her talk. And when you hear her talk, I realize the reason why I like hearing her talk is, well, first of all, she's brilliant and happens to be gorgeous, but that's just a side note. But really, when I hear Hillary talk, she speaks with such clarity. She sort of like makes everything make sense. There's just those people that can really do a great job of just making it all make sense. And so what I'm telling you is, if you are someone that loves the art of storytelling, or you're someone that doesn't, and you realize, oh, I actually do need to get better at this, my recommendation would be go and listen to different podcasts. And because it's audio only. So I'm specifically saying podcasts, not television and not YouTube, right? And poke through podcasts you like and podcasts you don't. And it doesn't have to be a specific genre. It can be even comedy. It could be anything, right? And listen to what you like and what you don't like, and really start unraveling, why is it that I like this person's podcast? What is it in the tone of their voice? Is it their pitch? Is it the way they explain things? Do they always, share personal stories and it makes me feel like I know them and they're not so stringent. Like get really specific about what it is that you like about their storytelling. And I really encourage that you go ahead and adopt some of those tools and start weaving that into your own storytelling and practice it. So practice, here's another one. When people speak really slowly, especially when they are telling a concept or sharing a concept that can be technical, it's really nice when they can explain something concisely and clearly and slowly. And one example of that, which is more mainstream, is Alex Hormozi. He was talking about branding, and you can tell he's more of like analytics type, numbers guy, like almost engineering brain, just because the way he speaks, he's like a man of few words, but when he speaks, like every word counts. Those people, like I wish I was more like that, but I'm not. But when he speaks, it's very like logical and like packed with information. Like he might throw out like a 15-minute podcast. Like yesterday he had one on branding and he's like, let me explain. And he made branding very formulaic, and it was just very like to the point, very concise, very like A plus B equals C, like very linear, and that works well for me in many ways. But he's one that's really interesting because he's very direct and, but he has so much knowledge, but he does it in such a direct, concise, like to the point, like no nonsense kind of way. Like there's no fluff, and I think that turns a lot of people off from what I understand. I happen to like it. I do well with that. But anyway, just a little note about the art of storytelling. I'm encouraging you to use your voice. I want you to practice at home and at work or in business, within your own business. People like stories. They learn from your blueprint. It gives them a foundation. It gives them a point of reference to anchor them in some way, and for me, look, I gave you a silly example just with golf, right? Where you wouldn't think that was like some big bang up story, but it gave me a really good point of reference that I've actually followed. So, and with that, make sure that you're also asking people their stories and asking older people their stories and younger people their stories, and be a listener. And their stories will help you in turn as well. And I think that's so much of my journey is I love being the student. I love listening to people so much. And, hopefully that gives you something to think about. It gives you some value in your life as you carry on and, just raises your awareness in terms of your ability to tell a good story and why you might tell a story, and understanding that you really can impact people in sharing stories, whether they're big or they're small or they're good or they're bad. So if this helped you, can you please leave me a comment on my Instagram or screenshot the episode and tag me at Kimberly Levy and I'll repost it, or give me 5 stars if you could on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I would love that. And I hope you guys are all doing well, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. All right, that is it for today. Thank you very much for listening, and be sure to follow us at Iconic Nation Media and send us a direct message and comment on some of our posts so that we can hear your feedback and incorporate them into our show. We appreciate you listening, and we look forward to catching you next week.